Do Barrie residents want a gun range within the city boundaries, especially near a daycare center and a trampoline park? Even if they do, Barrie City Council needs to approve the proposal because according to the bylaw 2010-36, no person is allowed to discharge any firearm within the city. However, there are a few exceptions. For example, a law enforcement officer can do so while carrying out duties. A municipal law enforcement officer can also do it while killing an animal. The Department of National Defense, which has an armory in Barrie, is also exempted from the bylaw. Simcoe County Sports Shooting and Educational Academy wants to start a gun range and education center on King Street near the light industrial area. If approved, it is going to be a 24-hour member-only gun range. Roger Gray, a representative of the Academy, is seeking an exemption from the bylaw to start the gun range. There were a lot of concerns about the safety, especially by City Councillor Gary Harvey. The proposed gun range is located in his ward. Roger Gray gave a presentation to the Finance and Corporate Services Committee about the proposed facility.
So we've come before you tonight regarding bylaw 2010-306, discharge of a firearm within the Barrie city limits. We're looking for a permitted use letter or an exemption to the bylaw to allow for a state-of-the-art education and sports shooting facility in the light industrial zoning locations within Barrie. We have permitted use under the zoning location of light industrial bylaw 2009-141 recreational establishment. We have been in contact with the OCF office, the Ontario Chief Firearms Office, and they have approved our supplier contractor for the build out, Action Target. They've built many sport ranges and practice facilities for private clubs and law agencies across the country. Simcoe County Sports Shooting and Educational Academy, which is our new name, will be a state-of-the-art shooting range with a 3-tiered educational facility that would be located in Barrie, Ontario, and serve as a private club to members of the public, hunters, sports shooters, as well as local law enforcement, military, security industry. We intend to offer, again, a 3-tier educational system. Our vision is to be the go-to educational and shooting facility company for all those living in around the Simcoe County and Southern Ontario regions. Our intention is to gain national recognition for our brand all over Canada. And this is why we're willing to go the extra mile to ensure that we hire only the best that would help attain these visions and objectives. By using Action Target, we will meet all the sound abatement and security issues that have arisen in the past at other outdoor ranges. Action Target will be using the most advanced soundproofing and buffers, but we'll also be building a box within a box, which will leave an airspace between the outer and inside of the walls for extra deadening of the sound to a level of approximately 60 dB, which is the same as people talking. If you note slides 11 and 12, you'll see some insight from Action Target on that, on the sound abatement. You can see kind of the soundproofing within there, some of the baffles, how they're used to redirect the sound, as well as anything projectile moving down range. And then if you move to the next slide, go back one, you'll see they've done a test. Action Target conducted a test back in 2008 to determine the level of sound emitting from an insulated indoor range. And you can see that the ambient, the traffic, and a shot fired with different spots from outside of the gun club. The readings from 50 feet east and 10 feet south increased slightly from other readings, but they believe that was due to reverberation between the buildings. And that test was done by an independent group, Lynn Ashby. Oh, sorry, it wasn't independent, of Action Target, with assistance from Skylar Walken and Get Some Guns. There's also a link there for harmful noise levels. Again, 60 dB is us talking. It's the normal level of talking. So, there's not, you're an industrial area, light industrial, you're actually going to be less noise than any of the other normal factories that are probably out there. As well, moving on to the next slides, regarding, so you can see some of the baffles and the redirection. Talks about them actually designed the innovative combination of steel, wood, and acoustic tiling to create the safety baffles. You know, the ventilation, everything is there. Like I said, they're all pre-approved with their state-of-the-art stuff with Ontario Fire Marshal. And then moving on to the next slide, you know, 15 and 16, or sorry, there's some more wall deflectors and baffles. Sorry, I don't have it up myself. There we are. So as well, Action Target will use the most up-to-date state-of-the-art security systems. You can see, you know, around the facility with cameras. You can actually hear it. It actually says it right there. Fedora integrates cutting-edge camera technology, security equipment, highly trained security professionals, advanced monitoring centers, and intuitive user access management tools to provide the industry's best security solutions. So obviously we're going to be using as much as possible as state of the art. And I believe there's one other slide. There we go. And it talks a little bit about the perimeter protection, access control, two-way audio, internal security, network video recording, and then again, in-lane monitoring as well, all high def.
A gun range where multiple people will be present with a weapon raises a lot of security questions. So the approval process has been taking a long time. Since Gray's first presentation in February this year to the same committee, the location of the proposed facility has been changed. Councillor Harvey wanted to know what would be the new location. Gray stated that the new location is still going to be on King Street, but he's not sure where because he would need approval from the city council to rent a property. He said it's a chicken and egg problem for him.
Councillor Harvey. No, well, they have another building that they're contemplating and building. We lost out on the other building. They wouldn't wait. They had other people willing to come in and rent it. I have chatted with the agent, and there's another building there that they're looking at building out, but there's also two other buildings along the same road now that would meet our requirements as well. So we would be looking for, you know, something in the light industrial area that maybe there could be something that's there to add an amendment once we actually have the location, that we could come back and amend the permitted use or the exemption to that location. Just this kind of, you know, it's the chicken and the egg sort of thing. Nobody wants to really commit to us until we know that we have the approval of council.
Follow-up, Chair Morales. Do you know what location you're looking at then? Because I think that's quite critical when it comes to our staff and also council considering this once it moves forward to general committee. And I would suspect that the Chief's Firearms Office, the location potentially could be critical to them when it comes to filing an application. Are you able to provide a little more specifics as to the general area? Like, are you still looking at remaining on King Street somewhere, or are you potentially looking at going to a different area of the city?
No, particularly like in the same area on King Street. You know, we'd be looking for maybe approval in principle. Again, they are in that same location at King Street that we had talked before. There was three buildings. There was two buildings up, or one building up, one being built, and a third potential. So there's that one, and then there's two other ones that are also on King Street that are available right now to lease as well, that would meet our requirements with the size. So yeah, we are looking within that area.
Another concern about the gun range is the security. Gray proposed a 24-hour gun range without any staff present. Councillor Harvey wanted to know the business plan about the safety.
We had quite a lengthy meeting after your first time before this committee and had some really good discussions, visited a potential site. Now, when it comes to the business plan, I was just wondering if you've narrowed down a little more concretely as to what your business plan is going to be, not from a financial perspective, but from a user perspective, because I know there was some discussion between yourself and I where you were seriously considering having this facility operating 24/7 without any staff working in it after hours. I was just wondering if you can update me and provide some clarity on what business plan and model you plan on using if this application is successful.
Well, again, it would be a private members only club. So in that I guess within the business plan, and most shooting ranges out there have an internal security and educational system that they run people through. And after they pass all those courses, they're brought in as members. And at that point there, our thought is that obviously there'd be operational business hours from, like, let's say 10 to 10 at night. What we've done in before, what I've seen in the past with some of these places is that they have like a VIP membership where they have a fob. They go through some extra training and they're allowed to, somebody who's on shift work, like let's say a police officer who's on shift work, he's coming off at 1 o'clock in the morning, can't sleep. He could go in and maybe do a little practice or whatever that he needs to get up to date with. Or a member who's working shift work would come in and go in the middle of the night. They would have access only to the back part of the range. Again, with the security system and the cameras in place, everything is monitored. Everything's to that person knowing who's coming in and who's going out. I'm sure much like going into council chambers with fobs and everything that's there.
As I mentioned in the beginning, there is a daycare center on King Street run by Kaleidoscope Play Center. Councillor Harvey asked Gray if he had spoken to sensitive businesses about his proposed gun range.
What steps have you taken since those discussions? Have you consulted with any of the sensitive use businesses in the area? Have you got any documentation of support from any of these sensitive uses? Or is that something that you haven't done at this point in time?
Yeah, I haven't done it at this point in time. Again, because after our talk, I found out just after that we had lost that location. So I didn't want to, go raising or stirring the pot. Maybe it didn't need to be stirred with some of those people.
Councillor Harvey proposed a motion that would require identifying sensitive businesses within 500 meters of the proposed location and seeking feedback from all businesses on King Street.
Motion here that Staff and Legislative and Court Services Department be directed to work with the proponent, the Chief Firearms Officer of Ontario, and the Barrie Police to identify applicable regulations, the potential amendments to the City of Barrie bylaws that would be required to provide an exemption to allow an indoor gun range at 342 King Street. However, I guess we have to modify that and just say a gun range on King Street. And to also identify any sensitive uses within 500 meters of the proposed location, and to send out a mail out to all businesses on King Street seeking feedback on the application, and to report back to General Committee. I just added a few things in there, which was actually in line with the last time this came before committee, where I added the amendment. I think it's prudent upon us because this will be potentially the first gun range within the city limits. They're obviously asking for some exemptions through our bylaws. Being someone that lives in the area, I'm fully aware that there are some sensitive uses that are quite close to the proximity of the locations that are being looked at for this. And I think it's only prudent upon us to ensure that we get feedback from all the companies in the area and not just the sensitive uses. However, I think it would be key when we identify the sensitive uses and potentially any impacts that it will have on these businesses that have been in operation for several years in the area.
Mayor Lehman was curious to know, other than noise, what other concerns Councillor Harvey had about the gun range?
To Mayor Lehman, there's been some concerns voiced to me through some of my residents that were following this the first go around when it comes to people obviously carrying their guns in and out. Obviously, they would still be within cases. However, we do have at least one daycare in very close proximity to this location, which obviously I suspect when they are consulted, that may be of of some concern to them. But I think it's only prudent upon us that we receive all the information before we provide an amendment to the bylaw to something of this nature.
Interestingly, there were more questions for Councillor Harvey from the members and non-members of the committee than for the owner of the proposed gun range. It was strange that other members and non-members of the committee did not have the same concerns as Councillor Harvey had. Councillor Morales, who is the chair of the committee, wanted Harvey to elaborate on what he means by the sensitive use. Morales seems to have taken Gray's word for it that facility would be a high-tech secure compound.
Kind of as an extension to Mayor Lehman's, I didn't really understand what's a sensitive use to a gun range in today's day and age. Again, it's not an external gun range. It's not like a field in the middle of somewhere where it's just some fencing. This seems like a very high tech, essentially secure compound. So, okay, daycare. You consider daycare a sensitive use, and also I believe, again, correct me if I heard it wrong, Councillor Harvey, the fact that some of these users might be bringing in their own guns, etc. So the concern that you have is the fact that there's a daycare nearby and people are having their own guns that they're taking out of their cars and bringing to the building. Is that specifically the sensitive use, or is there more to that I'm just not capturing?
It's not directly a sensitive use to this business. It's a sensitive use, no different than when we've looked at it in other applications. A sensitive use is exactly like what you said, a daycare, or I know just down the road, literally a few hundred meters from the location that they're potentially looking at, is a trampoline location where young children go in, have birthday parties, that type of thing. And again, keeping that in mind, the setup, I can assure you that most of these people, if not all of these people, will be bringing their own guns with them. Very, very few people store their guns full time at a gun range. So we will have, depending on the setup, again, what we've been presented with to date is just a bunch of mock-ups that have been provided by a manufacturer. They're not an exact replica of what we're actually looking at, from what I understand. And until we know all the facts, I think it's important to us to seek public input before we make our decision when it comes to this.
Okay, and Mr. and Mrs. Gray, I see your hand up. I'll get to you in 1 second if you have clarification, but I'm just going to finish with my question here. And if you can mute your mic, that'd be great. Councillor Harvey, let me just clarify my comment. I wasn't saying the daycare is a sensitive use. What I was saying is I was just repeating what you were saying and then asking as in like, why is it sensitive? My question was, I still don't kind of see it. I'm not saying no, I'm not like disagreeing with you. I'm saying what I heard from you was people are bringing the guns. So the transition moments between gun in car to gun in building and then back gun in car, that close to a place, to a daycare or possibly a trampoline business. I'm going to call that a youth-oriented business. Is that the concern? The fact that guns will be in a gun in transportation will be in proximity? Is that the concern, or is it the morality of it? Or I'm just wondering what goes into your determination of sensitive use.
I'm not bringing in any morality into this. I think it's quite clear. I'm not quite sure why it's so confusing. I just want to know what sensitive uses are in close proximity. We are going to be having people taking guns out of the trunks of their vehicles and carrying them into this facility, most likely in cases. It's a new thing in this city that we're looking at. Our bylaws don't permit this. This is an exemption that's being asked for, and I think it's only incumbent on us to get all the information and to also seek input from these potentially what in past has been looked at as sensitive uses, whether we're looking at other matters that have been before this council. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that anything bad is going to happen with this, but I think we need all the information and to also get feedback from the area businesses that potentially could be impacted, especially those that fall within the guidelines of a sensitive use.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Harvey, for that clarification. And I can't move on without saying the pun. I also wasn't bringing morality into this. My last name is literally moralist. So I'd be remiss if I didn't make that pun.
It is not allowed to fire a gun within the city limits, but Chair Morales wanted to know if there are any restrictions on the transportation of our firearms. Supervisor of Enforcement Services, Jason Ford-Grave, provided the explanation.
It is just for the discharge of a firearm. The traveling, the carrying of a firearm is under the Chief Firearms Office for Ontario.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that. Mr. and Mrs. Gray, thank you for being patient. Just because these are very important questions that require details of clarification, is there anything that was asked or answered by anybody just now that you would like to provide clarity, so we're making sure we're getting facts straight on that?
Yeah, as Mr. Harvey, Councillor Harvey mentioned, I mean, obviously, you know, people are educated when they get their gun license. You're not allowed to transport. In fact, you have to fill out a transition or transportation certificate with the OFC office as well. Once you have a gun club, you fill that out and you're allowed to only go back and forth. You're not allowed to stop. It has to be double locked. They're not loaded. They're separate, and it would be no different than, let's say, Cabelas, where somebody purchases a gun there. They walk out, you know, right next to, you know, the kids' land and trampoline places that are right there as well. But again, everything is in cases. And I guess a question that I have too is, I know that we're asking for for permitted use on this. But I understand that some of these gun stores that are already currently in Barrie also discharge firearms within their facility, you know, to when they're fixing a gun or they're doing something. So, you know, I'm again not trying to be picky here, but I know that does happen, whether it's Cabelas or some of the other gun stores that are in Barrie, that have a discharge can that they shoot into to discharge the firearm.
Yep. No, thank you, Mr. Gray. I think that's totally fair for you to provide context, and you're giving more information to let committee make that decision. So again, especially the Cabelas example is really good.
To verify Gray's claim, we reached out to Cabelas Barrie and spoke to the general manager, Holly Jones. Jones stated that Cabelas don't shoot a gun within its facility.
It's just been brought up by Mr. Gray about the store discharging firearms. I'm not saying that that's not accurate. However, I think things like that should be included in the report back to General Committee, because I'm not quite sure that that's occurring, especially when we've got a bylaw. They would have to apply for a bylaw exemption themselves. And I've never known any armorer to, when they're checking a firearm, to shoot it when they're not sure if it's proven to be operational or not. So
does anybody on committee need the motion read again, or are we good? Yes, read again. Councillor Harvey, go ahead.
That staff and Legislative and Court Services Department be directed to work with the proponent, the Chief Firearms Office of Ontario, and the Barrie Police Service to identify applicable regulations, the potential amendments to the City of Barrie bylaws that would be required to provide an exemption to allow an indoor gun range on King Street, and that staff identify any sensitive uses within 500 meters of the proposed location, along with sending out a mail out to all King Street businesses seeking their feedback on the application, and to report back to General Committee.
King Street is an unusual street that loops around. The distance between the north side and the south side is quite large. So Mayor Lehman wanted to know if Harvey wanted to seek responses from all businesses located on King Street.
Was it your intention that it would be literally every business on King Street, even the ones that are quite a distance away?
Actually, yes. I don't believe
Okay.
the south loop. So and the reason for this, Mayor Lehman, is so the trampoline park is literally a couple hundred meters away on this same north piece of the loop that the applicant is potentially looking at putting the gun range. And the other sensitive use that I am aware of is literally in the building right behind it. However, it does face the south side. They're literally a stone throw from one another. And without getting into specific addresses, that's the reason I've got the motion worded the way it is. And we've also got a few restaurant type locations that are both to the east and to the west of the proposed area. So I think it's only prudent to include everybody in it. We're really not talking about a lot of businesses because when you get to that far west end, there's still a lot of open fields where we don't even have any businesses yet.
Yeah, it's mostly manufacturers, but also the best Thai food in the city. Not that I have a preference as mayor. All Thai food restaurants in Barrie are equal, but this one is more equal than others. Okay, I'll support the motion, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate. That's unanimous, none opposed. Thank you, members of committee.
Harvey's final motion was passed unanimously. But there is more to the story. We will continue to bring you updates on this developing story, but that was all for now. See you next time. Thank you.